Ryan. I'm super excited to have you on today. How are you doing? How's your
Thank
weekend
you.
been?
I'm great. I just got back from a ski trip. I was in
Oh,
Denver or outside of Denver, and my whole body hurts. Uh,
very
but
nice.
I think it's a good thing. It means I got a good
A good
workout.
workout. Yeah. Okay, so just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? How old are you?
Well, my name is Ryan Woods. I was born in Orlando, Florida, and my family moved up to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I am now, when I was about 8. So that was kind of that. I've always kind of been into music, and I've been singing since I was a kid. I would just walk around the house humming a song I heard, and I eventually got into band in school, and that's kind of where I got my foundational musical knowledge, and kind of used that to like teach myself other instruments like piano and guitar, and eventually it all translated to production, and I was able to write and produce my own songs like later in high school. And eventually I just kept pursuing that, and you know brought me out to Los Angeles, which I've uh been living for like the last 3 years, and I'm currently home with my family right now. But yeah, and put out a project about a year, almost 2 years ago. Wow.
So how
uh, but
was
yeah.
was getting into music, was that just something you kind of came into on your own, or was it more of like a family influence, or was it just starting in school?
Um, I don't know. I've always had this like, uh, I guess my parents are both kind of musical. Like my dad used to play piano, and so did my mom. So when I got into music, they just encouraged me. And I don't know, I was in like kids choir at church and stuff, and they would always like give me solos, and eventually I started realizing I'm kind of good at singing, I guess. Um, and but yeah, I was always kind of looking for something that like set me apart from other people. Like I've always,
Hmm.
I don't know what instilled that in me, but I've always wanted to just be, have my own thing, and kind of my siblings are all the same, but they found their own thing, and music was always a constant for me when a lot of change was always happening in my life, like moving around. My parents split up, and so it was always kind of, I've always struggled with like mental health things as well. I have raging ADHD, so it's kind of been the one thing I've ever been able to focus on and like pursue, honestly. But I guess I don't know, it's kind of just been a 50-50 of like, it's always kind of just worked out for me, and it's always been the thing I've wanted to do as well.
Hmm.
So,
That's kind
um,
of the perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about because as I listened to the King of the Basement album, I've loved the album since it came out, which is really cool. Um,
thank you.
it definitely, for me, it encapsulated a lot of what I was feeling over quarantine, just being at home and having all these emotions and not really being able to talk with anyone. So I was wondering if any of that album for you was a product of being in lockdown.
Um, yes and no. It's kind of funny how like the meanings of like songs I write evolve over time, and also like further justify themselves more and more in the future. So I actually, that whole project was actually born out of a terrible breakup I went through, and it kind of popped my bubble. It changed me a lot. And I was always very, uh, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, I was a very pure person. Like I was always like, oh, everything's all good all the time. And,
Hmm.
everything's great in Ryan's world. And, as long as you just look at it the right way, it's a good time.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't realize how evil people could be in the world. And this girl I had dated I won't go into too much detail, but she kind of kicked up a lot of dirt in my life, and I lost a lot of friends through it, and uh, had a lot of issues afterwards. And for the first time, I experienced um, like mental illness and anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, and it just kind of like crumbled my whole world. I was like just so out of it for the longest time, and I kind of set myself into my own lockdown. In this was like 2018, 19. Um, so yeah, it was kind of funny how I kind of put myself in lockdown and then
Mhm.
finally got out of it, and now we're all
Literally
being
went right back into it.
right back into
Yeah.
lockdown. So yeah, I was at the time my bedroom was my parents' basement, and that's kind of where I would just spend all of my time. I'd cut off all my friends. Um, like the only people I saw were like my direct family, and I spent all my time just like in the basement making music, making art, anything to get me out of my head. And, you know, that was like the safe space I had created for myself to like, you know, um, I guess just seclude myself from the outside world so
Mhm.
I wouldn't be hurt so bad again or whatever the reasons were. But yeah, it was it was pretty traumatizing. So yeah, all I had to to do was make music and express my feelings. That was the only way I knew how. I didn't My song How I'm Feeling is about like the first panic attack I'd ever had, and I had no idea what was happening to me. I thought I was dying, and I was like, what is this? Like I have no reason to be like this sad right now, and like where's this darkness coming from? And then I learned a little word called anxiety. And then I was like, oh, that's what that is. It's
Mhm.
crazy. And just learning the word for it gave me like a face to punch,
Yeah.
to like fight back against it. And yeah, I was like, why was I why did they not teach this to kids? Like, so
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
was like,
Mental health is not something that is talked about enough at school, even just in music in general, which is one of the reasons I connected with that project so much because it's so personal. And in a way, it
yeah.
almost feels like you're reading us your diary, which is really cool. Did When you were writing these songs, did the vulnerability in that music come to you easily, or was it something that just you kind of had to break down and go for it?
So yeah, something my I guess my mom has always taught me to lead with vulnerability. And a lot of where um a lot of people think leading is being this like robust stone wall, and like you're not supposed to give in to your darker side or whatever. And on the other side of that, I've always had this like undying will to understand things, and everything in the world is a question mark for me. It's like, what's up with that? Why do we do that? Why, you know? And obviously that eventually led me to some dark places, but um, coming out on the other side, okay, strengthened me, I guess. And yeah, I've always been of the opinion that vulnerability is a show of strength. And
Mhm.
um, when you can be, I don't know, it's the most honest way to be. If you're um if you think being strong is, yeah, like not, like I said earlier, giving in to your darker side or your, you know, softer side or whatever, is, especially growing up in like the South, it's very frowned upon. It's
Mhm.
not the manly thing to do. And I don't know, I've always kind of rejected that idea. And, you know, combined with my will to set myself apart, I was like, I'm gonna be, a boy as I am, and be like everything you don't expect me to be.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be who I want to be, and I'm gonna be honest with myself when I feel something, and I'm gonna be honest with other people if I have some wisdom to give them that may or may not help them, or I don't know. It's always just kind of been like, I guess on the other side of that too, there's a fear of like, what if it's not the right thing or the perfect thing to like patch up whatever this problem is. Um, but it's only through that like trial and error of just trying, and
Mhm.
uh, I think part of being honest is honestly making mistakes and, not fearing the mistake and also not fearing the owning up to the mistake. And that's how you learn and, live and learn, I guess.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, it's always kind of been easy to, um, especially when I work alone on my things, it's easy for me to just not care what anyone thinks about whatever it is I'm doing right
Mhm.
here. And when I write something, it's like I can talk to myself, talk myself through things I'm going through. And even if it's like an ugly, side that I wouldn't want to show people, I can make art of it. And, you know, it's healing for people out there who go through similar things. So, yeah, I think it's important to lead with vulnerability for
Yeah.
sure.
And this is such an important conversation to have because people just they don't hear it enough, and especially in and not all modern day music, but with a lot of the stuff that I've heard, I just feel like it's very surface level and it's hard to connect with, and that's why I think your music is so awesome because it's something that people can relate to. And as I was saying, like you were going through something completely different, but I perceived it in a way that related to me. And also or music like that is just really cool to me. So, yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So and you were talking about production too. Did you produce all of this yourself?
Um, a good like 50 to 70% of it. I definitely had a lot of help. Because I was still pretty young when I wrote all those songs and didn't exactly know what I was doing, but I had like an idea of what I was doing, and I, excuse me. Um, yeah, they all started in my bedroom, uh, just messing around, feeling things out. And eventually I got them as far as I could take them, I guess, in my little humble bedroom, and was like, okay, if I want this to sound good and like, be digestible to people, um I need help to,
Mhm.
you know, bring it all together. And I did produce How I'm Feeling and Sorry all by myself. So I was very proud of those two songs. Those are kind of my
You should
babies
be.
on the
Yeah.
project. Thank you. But yeah, Bad Texture was like a little bit different. That was one of the first things I ever like produced. Sat on my laptop for like 3 years before I finally found a home for it. And it was right after I moved to LA. I was writing um, a song that I never even imagined would become Bad Texture. So I had just the pretty much just the verses and the pre-chorus for that, and I was like, I can't think of a chorus for this. So out of desperation, just started digging through old files and found that chorus, and I was like, yo, this is like perfect. Let's, when I don't know, I sang it over the instrumental, and we were like, yeah, let's put it in. We like this, and became Bad Texture. So I guess it happens a little bit different each time. I like working with people as well because they, sometimes they have keys to doors that I don't, creatively. And uh so yeah, it's kind of like it's like cooking, you can a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Mhm.
This person grows cucumbers in their yard. Bring them over. Let's like collab and I don't know, make our own thing.
Yeah.
So it's like a big soup of ideas and creativity, and everyone brings a little something to add, and whether it's just me doing it or five people plus me doing it, it's always fun to see what comes of it.
So, does your music typically start with lyrics and, like, you just having ideas and then putting them later into production?
Um, Not always. A lot of the times, yes, but sometimes it's like I'm always looking for a way to switch it up, and like, part of the fun of creating is kind of like abandoning your process
Mhm,
and seeing like what new thing happens and what new heights you can reach creatively. So yeah, like Bad Texture was a result of me, like I just bought a production software called Logic, if you've heard of it.
mhm,
um I've and yeah, I was like just messing with the stock sounds on it, and I was like, oh, I like these drums, I like this keyboard sound, blah blah blah. And then um I was like, I was actually trying to channel Ryan Beatty on that original demo, and that's kind of how that happened. I was like, okay, cool. And then it sat there forever and never did anything with it until I did.
mhm,
But and then Sorry, that song started off as just a guitar thing, those two chords, and then I recorded it and then added that piano. I was like, ooh, this is nice. Um, and then I actually wrote the chorus first, um, not really knowing where it was gonna go yet, but I just knew I liked that. Sorry, you wanted
mhm,
me. Um, and then yeah, I kind of wrote it in random order. I was like, okay, I wrote the first verse, and then I was like, well, wait, I actually kind of like that as the second verse, but what would be the first verse if that's not
mhm,
it? So it's kind of like a puzzle, every time when I have like, you get the idea and there's a spark that happens. You're like, ooh, that's cool. Where do we go with that? And then you dig around for different puzzle pieces, and it's a pretty shapeless puzzle too. So it's like you
mhm,
never know what picture you're gonna make. And yeah, it's a little bit different every time, but I guess usually it actually starts in my notes as like a little one liner even. And then I'm like, okay, this can be like like a whole song. I could write a whole song out of these like couple words. So how do we get to that thing? But usually where it starts, I usually picture where it could possibly end. And
mhm,
that's what motivates me to like get it to that finish line. I'm like, okay, um, this is like something. And then sometimes I'll write something that's cool, but it's like I don't really know how I would make this like a coherent concept, um, that people could understand. And so I have a lot of little bits and pieces of things that um, just like sit on my computer, and maybe they'll make it in a song one day, maybe not. uh, I don't know. The pandemic, I wrote close to like 400 or 500 songs throughout.
wow, oh my god,
And, uh, probably like half of those are like little nuggets of ideas. Some of them are like a full verse and chorus thing. And then, some of them are becoming full songs. And then I don't know. It's kind of, I watched a Tyler the Creator interview, and he was like, keep everything. You never know when you're gonna need it. So I've kind of always kept that in the back of my mind. It's kind of like, oh, this is a puzzle piece. This might come in handy, for a puzzle I work on in the future. I don't know.
mhm,
So yeah, it's a wasteland of, you
just
know,
figuring it out, yeah,
figuring it out. Yeah.
mhm,
And it's never really finished until it is. And sometimes you have to just like surrender to the song and be like, okay, I'm done with this. I could work on it forever, but
yeah.
this is, you know, good enough, I guess.
I first, um I first discovered you when I think it was the first Walls demo on SoundCloud. And there's you still have a lot, like all of your old SoundCloud stuff is still up. How did you transition from only making music on SoundCloud to releasing it on like Spotify and Apple Music and all of that? Like what made you want to decide that Bad Texture should be your first like official single into the world?
Um, Kind of a lot of things. Um, there was a time where I had a whole other project ready release like a year before I even wrote that or King of the Basement and that whole project. And obviously the music industry is insane and it's very difficult to like navigate through. It's kind of a labyrinth of so many things and it's always changing on you. And so yeah, I was basically yeah, I was kind of just writing for fun originally, and then it became a thing. I was like, oh, I could make a career out of this. Let's see where this goes. And um, around that time, I'd also started talking with Joe, my manager, who I think you've spoken with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was the first person who ever believed in me.
Oh, that's so
And
sweet.
I was like, other than my mom, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but like outside of that, someone within the industry, he was the first person who was like, yo, you could like do this, you know? You can if like I'll show you the way. Like if you want to just come along. Um so yeah, we've been working together for 6 years now, going on seven, I believe. Um and yeah, we've been through it all together. And originally from my SoundCloud stuff, I was getting like some interest from different labels and blah blah blah. So he was helping me navigate those things, and eventually we got a record deal from a subsidiary of Atlantic Records called East West, and their whole thing was like, hey, we'll develop you, um, we'll get you off the ground, and then maybe we can like sign you to like a bigger contract with the parent company and um we'll see how it goes. And yeah, that was going great for a while. That's how we released King of the Basement. I wouldn't have been able to afford like all the mixing and mastering otherwise. And then COVID happened and uh kind of the whole music industry was just shook and everything changed a lot. And uh yeah, now we're kind of here. I'm trying to figure out how to get my next project out. We have a few different ideas of how we're gonna go about it, so I'm excited for this year. But now I'm kind of ranting. But it became SoundCloud, and then I met Joe, and then became King of the Basement,
Mm-hmm.
and now I've been just writing since then and trying to put together a new project. And yeah, pretty stoked on how things are going now. I actually just bought my master's back from my label,
Awesome.
and got out of that deal because it kind of, you know, COVID kind of, I don't know, everyone pretty much left the company.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were like, okay, well, since there's like no team here anymore, will you please like, let us go, please? And they were like, yeah, we did kind of, uh, you are kind of like screwed here, so
Wow.
let's we'll let you go. So yeah, and that was a blessing in disguise because now I own my music and um I'm like able to support myself with that project now. And yeah, we're in a great spot, honestly.
Well, I'm really looking forward to all the new music. And you teased something on Instagram, I think last week. When I was listening to that, it totally reminded me of What a Feeling by One Direction. I don't know if you've heard that song,
Oh
but
yeah, that's my favorite One Direction song.
it's such a good song. And I always go
Amazing.
back to it. I heard that and I was like, oh my gosh, this has that same vibe and I love it so much. It just
Yeah.
made me want to boogie. Um, I also wanted to talk about your cover of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. That So I'm not usually a fan of like studio covers, but oh my God, it's incredible. What made you want to do that and release an Elton John cover?
Um, it kind of began as just so my personal feelings towards that song have always been like, wow, this is a amazing song. It's well written, it's composed really well. And then I started listening to a lot. And it was like the middle of the pandemic. I was like struggling for money and I was thinking about moving back home. And I listened to that song one day and I was like, oh, this song is starting to hit different. Like, I don't know how he originally meant it, but it started resonating with me in a way of like, I'm from a pretty small rural town in Tennessee, and I moved to the big city and was trying to just make my dream work, and things kind of weren't going well for a minute. And I was like, am I really gonna have to like just go back to all that, like, the way life used to be, and like give up my dreams? And that was kind of why I ended up really falling in love with that song. And one day I was just bored and I was like, I hadn't written anything in a while. There was nothing I really wanted to write about. So I was like, let's try just to keep my chops going. Uh, let's do a cover. And I was like, I'd been singing that song a lot lately, just on the guitar. And yeah, I was ended up making my own little cover of it. And then I eventually brought it to a producer friend of mine who kind of helped me, you know, spice it up a little more. And we recorded live drums for it. Um, and I started showing it to people, and they were like, "Yo, this is crazy, dude! Like, you have to put this out. This is so good." And I was like, "Really? Like, I didn't. I kind of just did it for fun, but if you say so." And I was kind of in between all the label stuff at the time, so it kind of made sense to release a cover. And uh, yeah, so all those factors kind of worked together, and I was like, "Yeah, let's drop it. Screw it." So I made a little sketch for like the album cover on it, um, and I digitized it and colored it, and yeah, and then we released it. So
That cover is
yeah,
such an experience to listen to because it's so different from the original, but embodies it so well, and it truly feels authentic to you while still honoring the original, and I love that, and that's why I usually don't listen to studio covers that often, but sometimes it just hits really good, and you're like, "Wow, that
yeah,
I love seeing people do that kind of stuff."
yeah.
Um,
And that was like my whole purpose in doing so. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do a cover, it's gotta be like
mhm,
sick,
mhm,
So thank you. I'm
yeah.
glad you liked
I
it.
think Elton would be very proud. I hope
Amazing.
someday he hears it. It's such a good
Same.
cover. So a while ago, you opened a few shows for Blu DeTiger, right, in November?
Hmm.
How did those shows go? How was that for you?
Oh, it was so much fun. Um, it'd been a while since I'd played some shows, and we were like, we were submitting for tour after tour, trying to get like an opening spot. Um, in February, I'd done my own headliner and was like, we were kind of using that to like be like, hey, like we can pull some tickets, we can, you know, blah blah blah. So over the summer, we were like submitting for stuff, trying to open for different people, and like nothing was really landing. So we were like, okay, let's like chill out and let's just put a new project together and get ready to go in next year, start off strong. And then like she announced the tour, and then like two weeks before the tour started, she or her manager called mine and was like, hey, like, would you be able to like make it to these shows if we let you open? We're like, yep, please, yes. So yeah, it was a very pleasant surprise, and got my band together. We rehearsed for like a few days, and we were like, yeah, we would love to do the tour. we barely made it to the first show because we had to drive. Basically, my van rental ended up falling through. It was like impossible to find like a van that would like get us to San Francisco. So we ended up taking my two bandmates' cars and like just caravanning all the way up to San Francisco, and we piled all our equipment in there and like made it just in time. Um, and yeah, it was very nervous leading up to it because I hadn't played shows that size ever. Um, they were all like pretty big theaters, like 800 to 1,000 people, and they were all like pretty much sold out. And so, yeah, I was like, I hope I can impress some people. And uh, yeah, we got great reactions from the fans and got a lot of new fans. I even had some people come out to the shows and sold a lot of merch. And I was like, yeah, very, very pleased with how everything went. I'm very thankful to Blue for sharing the stage with me. She was very sweet, very encouraging to, younger artists such as me. And yeah, it was definitely kind of refueled my fire a little bit because if I'm being honest, it was a really difficult year.
Yeah, well, it was really cool to see that and just seeing like people tag you and stuff and just talking about it. It was really fun to see those experiences with fans and stuff. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so encouraging.
Yeah. Well, that's about all I have for you. Zoom is going to kick me off here in a minute because I don't have the premium
Oh
version.
yeah, it's
So,
all good.
but anyways, do you have anything else that you want to say? Anything else coming up in the new year?
Um, well, I pretty much have a project like 80% done. I have two songs ready to go. Planning to release stuff starting in February, hopefully. So keep an eye out. Um, and yeah, I'm hoping to release two projects this year. So I'm really stoked for all this music to finally come out. Been, I'm just like ready to burst. Like I feel like a pregnant mom or something, 9 months, and I'm like, get this music out,
Yeah.
please. So we're finally there. That probably wasn't the best analogy to use, but
No, it
uh,
works. Get
it
the point
works.
across.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time. This was really good. I'm excited to get it up. Yeah. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Peace and love.
Peace and love. Bye.
Bye.